to welcome Andy Street to this morning's session. For those of you that don't know Andy, he is the Mayor of the West Midlands. He was elected in 2017, and that role gives him a range of responsibilities in relation to transport, housing, skills, jobs. And before he was Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy had a long career at John Lewis in the UK. So Andy, over to you.
Hello there, everybody. Hopefully you can see and hear me clearly then. And I've got a few slides just to take through the importance of 5G to the West Midlands and just what's going on here. Before I say anything more, I will freely admit I am not the technical expert, unlike lots of you on the call, but I hope I will demonstrate to you that we really understand the importance of this to transforming our economy, hence the first slide that you see. So the context, of course, is that the West Midlands has been performing extremely well as an economy pre-COVID. And just that graph, image there of the UK broken down into its regions shows the relative rates of growth, and you can see the picture there. So this was an area where the economy was performing really well, and we were clear which sectors of the economy were really critical to our future growth. And you will see the link of this to 5G and digital in just one moment. But just because it explains why we were so determined to be leaders in this new area. And what this does, it's called our local industrial strategy. It's the approach for the region really all boiled down to one page. And it says, which sectors are we going to lead in the future? No surprise for Birmingham and the West Midlands, advanced manufacturing. We've always been brilliant in there, but also you'll see from across the top a number of other high growth sectors. And of course, across the bottom of the left-hand side of the page, all the enabling pieces around housing, skills, transport, energy, the underpinning pieces, the supply side pieces, the economists would call them, of the economy. But the critical point was, if you look at those and you think of some of the images of the sectors where we are talking, whether it be banking, that's the top left-hand side there, is the HSBC headquarters building in central Birmingham. Bottom left is the advanced manufacturing example for aerospace based in Wolverhampton. Of course, digital, BBC Three, the digital channel based in Birmingham. And bottom right, of course, the autonomous pod from Coventry. If you think of all of those sectors which were driving the productivity of our economy, hence that being the title of the slide, and productivity here was growing faster than anywhere else in the country, they were all being transformed by digital. This is the critical thing. We knew that each one of those sectors was being changed very rapidly. My background, as you said in the introduction, was in retail. We've seen that change. We've seen hospitality change. We've seen leisure changed. But if you think about manufacturing, you think about construction, you think about green tech, all of them were being changed by digital. So we were absolutely determined when it came to the government's competition for the competition for the first large-scale 5G testbed to be the winner of that competition. In my first year as mayor, some things went well, some things went badly, but this was the thing that we were absolutely focused on because we knew it would set us up for success in those critical sectors. And of course, at the time, we were just creating our industrial strategy, the first region in the country to do it for the Theresa May, Philip Hammond, Greg Clark regime. And we knew that this was a real sort of linchpin of it. The little image you see was when, with the digital minister, Margot James, the award was made back on the 4th of September 2018 that we would be the test bed. It was a tough competition. We were delighted to win. And then, of course, the structures that have followed, the funding from DCMS, our funding, the governance structures, again, shared with DCMS, was all about leveraging in private sector cash, but the public sector doing what I believe it can do, have that catalytic effect. So we were very pleased to win that. And that was all a good story. But obviously, what has happened in the last 6 months is we have had a real economic crisis. There's a lot of words on that slide there, but it's the KPMG review of the economic outlook for each region. And having been the best for a decade before, the prediction is that the West Midlands will be most heavily impacted by the COVID situation. 9.1% output drop. And this is, as it says in there, because of the relatively high concentration of automotive. And we know that sector's been very heavily challenged. Other manufacturing areas, but also if you think of higher education, our great universities have a higher proportion of our GDP from the HE sector than anywhere other than Oxford and Cambridge. And we also have a very high proportion of our GDP from business tourism. And if you think of Birmingham as the conference city, so some of the areas where we've been really strong, we're actually hit badly. So the simple point is, against that background, and that it makes it even more important that we are ahead of these digital trends. You'll all know this, but just a very simple graph with the slides that show the increased consumer use of digital facilities through the pandemic period. And of course, we all know that's been consumed remotely. It's been consumed using new technology. So critical, even more critical, that we move ahead to this leadership position here, because that is what will address the economic challenge that we face. So if we then come to exactly what we are doing with WM5G, there are really two simple points about it, as it says on the left-hand side of the slide. First of all, it's about accelerating the 5G and fibre networks. So it's about getting the infrastructure in place. And our target, as it says on the right-hand side of the slide, is simply to be the UK's most connected region. But then probably even more important, it's number 2 in the blue there. It's to test, prove and scale new 5G services. And in our bid, we said we would do that across the areas that are critical to our economic recovery. So we've focused on transport, on health and on manufacturing. And it's about driving out that innovation. So let's have a little look at how we're doing in those two things. So in terms of the connectivity, very recent data, recent report, I think it was about 2 months ago now, of coverage of the UK with 5G. And you will see that in terms of combined authorities, we're nicely ahead. And in terms of leading cities, it is obviously, for a proud Brummie, jolly good that we're also leading there, and to be ahead of London is obviously particularly sweet moment for us. So it does appear that this status, this extra work, working with all of the providers, and I know some of them will be on the call today, I should say a big thank you to them for working with us. But we've seen lots of new tests of that coverage being done here. So that is brilliant, and we've got to carry on with that, obviously. And then what we've done to try to get the innovation in the business sector is we have launched what we call our 5G accelerators. The commitment is to do it in Wolverhampton, Birmingham and Coventry, our 3 different cities, with a slightly different focus, as it says there, reflecting the economic strength of the different cities. But the simple point is that we want there to be a physical space. The one in Birmingham is based at Innovation Birmingham, but also a lot of it is virtual, obviously, where we will actually become like a centre of expertise to encourage startups and small businesses to innovate in this way. And we're entitling that our new facilities, we're calling them Spring with a 5 Pring, if that makes sense. You can't see that on the slide. And it's great that in the face of the pandemic, we actually launched our first one in Birmingham earlier in the year. And then in terms of some of the actual applications that we've started to trial to actually give benefit to our citizens, I won't go through them all, but down the left-hand side, literally launched this week with Happyway, the curbside parking trial, and with Vodafone, and then live 5G monitoring on our tram system and on our all what we're working to for each one of our main road junctions is 5G traffic monitoring there, back to our control centre, our regional control centre, and taking real-time intervention actions there. Then up on the top right, one that I really love, a very early trial that we did with BT, this one actually, what we call the virtual ambulance, connecting scenes in an ambulance back to A&E departments, enabling consultants through 5G technology to give potentially life-saving advice at the scene of an accident, for example, there. And then a number of the demonstrators that we did with Ericsson and the hackathon just coming up as well. So you can see that we're getting to some really practical trials on the ground. And in terms of going forward, back to the two blue themes, again, further acceleration of the actual of the infrastructure there, and a number of points that the team from WM5G could talk to anyone in detail about, but I won't take time on this slide doing that. And then taking at the top of it the simple idea again through our accelerators, and then choosing our particular areas of focus: transport, healthcare, manufacturing, more applications, all to test prove. And in the critical world, we need to move away from the small scale tests, actually to scale up these new 5G services. Frankly, we're not short of ideas, not short of partners wanting to come forward to work with them on us. That's very exciting, but we've got to get behind the really big ones that will genuinely be game changing and show the potential of this new technology. So that's our little summary, hopefully briefly. But what I hope it gives you is a picture of why we understood this was so important, a real piece of evidence that it is working when you look at the coverage that we are achieving, and a sense that we're now getting in to some of the practical deliverables to actually set so that citizens get benefits. So hopefully that gives you what you need. And I think, am I available to take a few questions if there are any?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andy. We've definitely got some questions coming through from the audience here. So you mentioned WM5G. Delighted to say we've got a couple of representatives of WM5G coming in during the rest of today, which is fantastic. So they'll be able to expand on some of your comments there. One question around the digital divide, and given the current crisis, how are yourselves and the region seeing issues around the digital divide, and how that's been impacted by the current crisis?
Well, there's certainly, that can be taken in all sorts of ways. There's certainly an issue around education, and we've seen that some education establishments have been far better than others, frankly, in addressing that. Of course, the government has its scheme for providing the kit required. That's, if I'm honest, it's not been as complete as we would have liked. What we are trying to do, though, come back to find a solution to this, is through the whole question of the retraining element. Now, obviously, very sadly, on the back of COVID, there'll be more people pushed out of work, potentially relatively low skilled work areas. That what of some of the in some of the skills provision. So we're acutely aware of that and trying to work decisively on it in the skills agenda. And I want us to be a region that's renowned actually for that digital retraining.
Fantastic, thank you. And you mentioned a focus around automotive, manufacturing, and health as well. Which sectors would you like to see 5G improving, making an impact on moving forward? Are there other sectors that are of particular interest in your region?
Well, it's truthfully, it's going to enable all sectors. Now that might sound a cop out, but it's true. So two that we've not mentioned that I think are really interesting, and we had this at the Ericsson demonstration. Actually, this is really proven the whole sort of creative sector, how film is transferred, for example. It's an obvious example, and what we're working on at the moment is interesting. Is we've got our new film studios very near to final sign off with the creator of Peaky Blinders, Stephen Knight. One of the things that has driven the private sector to unite around that has been the 5G capability in Birmingham. So it's been fascinating how it sort of crops up in the business cases for other investments that are coming. That's, when you know things are going right is when you see something like that. And another example is obviously the construction sector. I just didn't pull out an example, but if you just think about how that's being used, particularly by the top end professions in the construction sector, surveyors, architects, designers, again, you can see the transformational benefits there hugely. So actually, this might sound glib, I don't think there will be a sector that isn't affected, but we really wanted in our demonstrators, going back to my very first basic point, we wanted to apply this to the areas where we had a distinct advantage, and automotive, of course, is the most famous one for the Midlands.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your contribution, Andy. Some really good examples of what's going on in your region there. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure the audience have really enjoyed your comments there.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Cheerio, bye.
Thanks very much.